Hello, my name is Afradi Salmon Mujage from Tanzania. Welcome in this class Form 1 students to proceed with the third topic, which is so-called the third topic according to our syllabus. And on the last session we ended on the regional trade, and we saw the impacts which were included, the positive impacts and negative impacts. So today we are going to see another part, which is transatlantic trade. Transatlantic trade as the one of the long distance trade or regional trade. The transatlantic trade was the trade conducted across the Sahara Desert. It means that transatlantic trade, that was the trade that conducted across or through the Sahara Desert. It involved the people of Northern Africa and the people of West Sudan. It means that the trade involved the people from it involved the people from Northern Africa and the people of Western Sudan. And this trade started a long time ago between 3000 BC to 2000 BC. So you can see that the trade was started a long time ago between the year of 3000 before the Christ and 2000 before Christ, and it became important in the 1st century AD after the people of West Africa to discover the use of camel and to lead to the formation of many trade routes. It means that the trade became popular or became important in the 1st century AD after the people of West Africa introduced the use of camels, and that led to the formation of different trade routes. The transatlantic trade was known as dumb trade because there was no common language which was used. It means that the transatlantic trade was known as dumb trade because there was no common language that was used during that trade. So that's why they called it's called the dumb trade. The people who involved in the trade are as follows. It means that the people or the participants of transatlantic trade included the West Africa or people from West Africa, the North Africa, and the Savannah region. It means that the people from these regions were participated in the transatlantic trade. Let us see the movement of traders. The movement of traders, it means people or traders organized themselves in groups known as caravans. It means that the people who participated in the transatlantic trade organized themselves in the groups which were called the caravans, and that we can call them trade caravans. And goods involved in the trade involved the coconuts, gold, salty, foodstuffs, ivory, clothes, gold, beeswax, slaves, and ostrich feathers goods from West Africa. It means that the items which were involved in the trade from West Africa involved the coconuts, gold, salty, foodstuffs, ivory, clothes, beeswax, slaves, and ostrich feathers goods from West Africa. And those goods or items, trade items that were brought from West Africa. But from North Africa there was salty and animal skin. It means that these were goods that were brought from North Africa. And the goods from Europe and Asia were cotton and silk, cloth, swords, guns, metal pans, horses, and Arabic books. These were goods which were which were brought from Europe and Asian nations or Asian regions. It means that they brought such goods like cotton and silk clothes, swords, guns, metal pans, and horses and the Arabic books. And these were exchanged with those trade items with the Africans. Let us see the trade routes. The first one was Western route. It means that the Transatlantic trade involved in the three routes or trade routes. The first one was Western route from Sidi Massa, Fez in Morocco, passed through Tagada, Taodeni, and that Western route from Sidi Massa, Fez in Morocco, passed through these regions like Tagaza, Taodeni, Warata, Audagot, and Kumbi Saleh to Timkut. That was the Western route. And the second one was Central route. These passed the Tunis, Gat, Gamis, Keno, Gao, and Hausa Rand. That was the Central route. So it touched these regions during the Transatlantic trade. And the Eastern route, this began in Tripoli, Mosul, and Birma. So that's where the trading routes that were used during the Transatlantic trade, and the regions where the routes were crossed or passed through. Those were trading routes that were used in Transatlantic trade. So let us see the factors that led to the growth of Transatlantic trade. The factors that necessitated the growth of the Transatlantic trade. The following are some factors that contributed to the growth of Transatlantic trade or GAM trade. The first one was the stability of both communities. It means that the stability of both communities. It means that both communities which were participated in the trade were had the stability in their regions. Both North Africa and the West Sudan zone were politically stable. It means that both Western zone and North Africa and Western South and the Western Sudan zone were politically stable. Mean there were no eruption of wars or frequent conflicts. For example, leaders like Sundiata Keita and Mansa Musa collected taxes and established guides on trade routes. To mean that, for example, the leaders who participated were effective in the trade, like Sundiata Keita, as well as Mansa Musa of Ghana, collected taxes and established the guides on the trade routes. To mean that they established who could guide the people during the trading activities. And this enabled the people to conduct trade without fear. It means that the presence of stability throughout the region made the people to conduct the trading activities without any fear. Up to the end of 15th century AD, many traders were motivated to come to Western Sudan for trade. It means that up to the end of 15th century, the main people were motivated or were attracted to come to Western Sudan for trading activities because there were stability, and the region or the condition of that region was suitable for trading activities, and that's why people conducted their trading activities without fear because of the stability and security of the region. The second factor for the growth of transatlantic trade was Western Sudan provided goods needed by the traders from Europe. It means that the Western Sudan provided goods that were needed or that were in high demand by the European societies. These goods included gold, ivory, and slaves. It means that these goods were needed by the European communities during the Transatlantic Trade, and that made the Transatlantic Trade to grow because of the availability of enough trade items that were needed by the traders of that trade. Through trading Western Sudan exchanged our own commodities with goods from Western Europe and Asia. In turn, she got clothes, guns, and other commodities that was needed by the Western Sudan legions. To mean that due to the trading activities, Western Sudan exchanged commodities or our own commodities with goods from Western Europe and Asia. In this turn, she got the manufactured goods from those societies, Europe and Asia, like clothes, guns, and other commodities that were brought by the European as well as Asian communities during that trading activities. The surplus in production, Western Sudan was adequate to sustain demand for products such as cola nuts and gold, ivory, slaves, whereas Tagaza produced enough salt to meet the needs in Western Sudan. To me, that the surplus production in Western Sudan was adequate to sustain demand for products such as cola nuts, gold, ivory, slaves, whereas Tagaza produced enough salt to meet the needs in Western Sudan, and that was the case. The high production capacity in the region enhanced the growth of Transatlantic Trade. I mean, the high production capacity in the region enhanced the growth or development of Transatlantic Trade. That was the factor number 2. The third one was honesty. It means that the Berbers of North Africa and the African traders of West Africa trusted each other. It means that they trusted each other, or they were honest each other in trading activities. And traders brought in commodities without fear of theft and robbery, enabling the trade to flourish. It means that due to presence of honesty among the traders, brought the commodities without any fear of theft or robbery, and that led to the enabling the trade to excel or to develop, and that made the Transatlantic Trade to grow. Also, the use of camels for transport suited the desert conditions and facilitated the development of the Transatlantic Trade. To mean that the use of camels as the means of transport in the desert facilitated the development of the trade, because during the Transatlantic Trade the only major means of transport was camels as well as horses that were able to sustain the climate condition of the desert, and they were able to transport or to move a long distance. As you know, the desert climate is just the dry area, so the camels were used as the transport means that suited the desert conditions and facilitated the development of the Transatlantic Trade. And these animals could not only carry more commodities than the horses and human porters, but also endure the desert conditions. To mean that those animals, camels, which I mean, could not only carry more commodities than horses and human porters, to mean that they carried also the human, but also endured the desert conditions, to mean that they were managed or they managed to endure the desert conditions. Camels can survive without water for a long time. It means that these animals or camels can survive or could survive without water for a long period of time. And these convenient means of transport strengthened the development of the transatlantic trade. It means that these convenient means of transport facilitated or strengthened or made the development of transatlantic trade. Another factor for the growth of transatlantic trade was geographical location of the region. It means that the geographical location of the region made the development of transatlantic trade. On how? The location and the climate favored the production of coconuts and other foodstuffs that were needed in the community, especially in the foresty region. It means that the geographical location of the region where Western Sudan and North Africa, it means the location and the climate favored the production of coconuts and other foodstuffs which were needed by the different communities, especially the foresty regions to community, especially the foresty regions to the south. It means that the foresty regions in the south were in high demand of the foodstuffs that were produced by the Western Sudan regions, and the region of Western Sudan had no impassable forest because many areas were covered by short grasses, grassland. The region of Western Sudan had no impassable forest because many areas were covered by short grasslands. This enabled traders to cross the desert without fear or any difficulty. It means that the area was covered with the short grassland, so it was not dangerous or it could not bring fear among the traders who were crossing through that desert which were covered by the short grassland. And this enabled the traders to cross the desert without fear or any difficulty, and that marked the development of transatlantic trade. Also, another factor for the growth of transatlantic trade was the invasion of medium of exchange contributed to the growth of transatlantic trade. It means that there was the invasion of medium of exchange that were usually in trading activities. At the beginning, only the salient barter trade it means that at the beginning there was the use of barter trade, whereby goods were exchanged for goods. Later on, cowries shares were introduced as a convenient medium of exchange. It means that later on, the cowries shares were used as the medium of exchange during the transatlantic trade, and this in turn facilitated the development of transatlantic trade. It means that this the introduction of cowries shares as medium of exchange facilitated the development of transatlantic trade. That was the factor number 6. The 7th was from the northern part, the Berbers provided capital to many traders who used it to cross the Saharan desert. It means that from the northern part, the Berbers or the middlemen, the middlemen of that trade provided capital to many traders who used it to cross the Sahara desert. That led to the development of the transatlantic trade. And another factor, there was removal of language barrier. It means that there was the removal of language barrier. This was attained after Arabic language became the traders' medium of communication. It means that after the arrival of Arabs in the region, it it means there was introduction of Arabic language, which were supposed to be used as a medium of communication among the people who participated in the Transatlantic trade. And this in turn facilitated the trade by making communication between the traders easy. It means that the introduction of Arabic language simplified the communication among the traders during the trading activities. That led to the development or growth of Transatlantic trade. And another one was absence of competition for trading activities in the regions. It means that there was no competition for trading activities in the region, and there were no regular ships that visited the coast of West Africa. It means that during the trade there were no competition, and there were no regular ships that visited the coast of West Africa, and as a result, what was produced from the forest zone was peacefully transported to the North Africa through the Saharan Desert. So it means that as a result, everything that was produced from the forest zone was peacefully or easily transported to the North Africa through the crossing the Saharan Desert, and hence that marked the development of the trade. Also, scarcity of commodities like gold and salt. It means that the scarcity of commodities like gold and salt were made the development of the trade, because there are some communities that were producing or providing such commodities, and that made the trade to still or to proceed taking place, because the gold and silver were in high demand. And that made the development of the trade. And the last one was the introduction of houses, which were used in consequence and the expansion. It means that the introduction of houses, which were used as the alternative, which were used in conquest and the expansion. Houses were used by the armies or by the military, which were used to apply conquering and the expansion of the territory in the region, and that meant the development of the transatlantic trade. So these were the factors that necessitated the development or growth of transatlantic trade. So let us see the effects of the transatlantic trade in Africa. The effects of the transatlantic trade in Africa. The first one, it led to the growth of empires like Ghana, Mali, and other empires. It means that the transatlantic trade led to the development of, the growth of empires like Ghana, Mali, as well as Songhai, that were the Western Sudanic state that were resulted as the trading activity that were taking place in that region. Also, it increased the development of agriculture. It means that as during the trade there was the high need of agricultural stuffs and all agricultural products like food crops or food stuffs were needed. So the communities which were agriculturists participated fully in production of agricultural products, and that made the development of agriculture. Also, it led to the introduction of Arabic Islamic religion cultures. It means that the trade led to the introduction of Arabic or Islamic religion cultures in the region. As after the arrival of the Arabs introduced the Islamic language to be used as the language of medium of communication in the region, and that the Islamic styles or Islamic culture were established on the region. And the fourth one was formation of mixed races, example half caste. It means that there was formation of mixed races as there was intermarriage between the Africans and the white race, or Arabs and the Europeans. So the mixed races were immediate, or like for example half caste, that was the races which was happened during the trade or after the trade. And the last one was the growth of towns and cities like Ijene, Timkut, Gao, and Walata. It means that the trade necessitated to the growth of town, town and cities like Ijene, Timbuktu, Gao, and Walata, and these were the results of the Transatlantic trade. Also, let us see the decline of Transatlantic trade. The decline of Transatlantic trade. What were the factors that made the decline of Transatlantic trade? The factors that made the decline of Transatlantic trade. By the second half of the 19th century, the volume of Transatlantic trade started to decline. It means by the second half of 19th century, the Transatlantic trade started to decline. A number of obstacles or problems have been identified to explain the decline of the trade. These were the problems which were analyzed to show how the trade was collapsing. The first one was the strong desert winds, meaning that there was the strong desert winds that were facing or that was hindering the traders to cross the desert. The traders could not withstand the hazards of sandstorms, and many abandoned the trade as the result. That led to the collapse. Also, the traders faced the danger of getting lost in the desert because of the routes were not clear. It means that there were the issue of lost in the desert because the routes were not clear. And once traders got lost, they would wander in the desert for a long time and eventually die of thirst and the starvation. So that made the trade to face some obstacles. But also the traders were subjected to attacks by desert robbers who made their living by stealing from trade caravans. It means that as the time went on, there was immediately the robbers who were robbing the traders, stealing their goods. In this process, traders lost their lives and goods, and this discouraged the traders from participating effectively in the trade also, hence the collapse. Also, there was the extreme climate conditions were unfavorable to traders. To mean that the extreme climatic conditions were unfavorable to the traders, and the heat and light temperature, heat and high temperature during the day and a very low temperature at night due to the absence of cloudy cover discouraged the traders. To mean that there were high and heat during, there were heat and high temperature during the day and the low temperature at night, and that discouraged the traders to continue in their trade, and that led to the collapse of the trade. Also, traders faced the danger of highly poisonous desert creatures whose bites could result in death, including snakes and scorpions. It means that the desert are the dangerous poisonous creatures like snakes and scorpions, whose bites could result in death, and that made the traders to be discouraged. And another factor for the decline, traders faced language difficulties. This hampered communication during trade, as such silent trade had to be used initially. To mean that the traders faced the language barrier, because not all traders were familiar with Arabic language, so this marked the collapse of the trade. Another factor for the collapse of transatlantic trade was the abolition of slave trade contributed to the decline of the transatlantic trade. It means that in the region in West Africa and North Africa there was the abolition of slave trade, so that led to the decline of transatlantic trade. Slaves were the main item of trade. When slave trade was abolished, trade started to decline. Another factor for the decline was the shortage of water, also led to the decline in trade. It means that there was shortage of water in the desert. And the oases in the Saharan desert provided water seasonal, but they sometimes dry up, and this made it difficult for the traders to cross the Saharan desert, and that led to the collapse of the trade. Also, there was frequent wars. The war in Morocco and the one between Christians and Muslims disrupted the smooth running of the trade, meaning that there was wars in Morocco between the Christians and the Muslims, disrupted the smooth running of the trade. The Moroccan invasion of Western Sudan in 1591 AD disturbed the growth of the trade by taking gold at Wangala. It means that the wars also led to the collapse of the transatlantic trade. Finally, the transatlantic trade collapsed in the 16th century. From this period onwards, West Africa witnessed the expansion of European occupation on the coast of West Africa. It means that after the collapse of the transatlantic trade in 16th century, from these periods onward, the Western Africa witnessed the expansion of European occupation or domination on the coast of West Africa. And that made the collapse of transatlantic slave trade and make the beginning of transatlantic slave trade. Let us see the transatlantic trade routes. As we see in the map here, we see that there is Sijilima, Ferdi, Tagaza, Warata. This was the western route, and this was the central route, that is Gat through Cairo, Mazluk, Tamanrasset, Gao, and Jannah, and this was the central route. Also, there is the northern route that involved the Kano, River Benue, and other areas. So this is the map showing the trade route during the transatlantic trade. So let us see the exercise at it marks the end of our topic, also as the end of our lesson. I would like to give you some questions which combine or comprise the 4 questions. The first one mentions factors for growth of transatlantic trade. The second outline 3 routes during transatlantic trade. The third define transatlantic trade, and the last one mentions 2 major medium of transport used during transatlantic trade. So these are the questions which you have to perform Form 1 students as to measure your understanding capacity of the session which we have done. So I would like to thank you for watching until the end of our class, and I wish to welcome you in the next session for proceeding learning with us, Educare Tanzania, for the best service. I wish you a good time and have a good preparation and nice studies. Bye bye.